So let's start with any questions related to the surah, and then we can go. That's right. Go ahead.
Oh, I have three, I guess two short ones and a long one. First, just referring to Latin, what area in Damascus specifically? I'm not really familiar with this area.
It's actually, you know what?
That was actually my question.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was like, what? I didn't realize there was a holy spot
area
in Damascus.
I didn't. Let me see if I can find it, because it is mentioned in some of the tafsir. This is.
While he's doing that, let me ask you, how many people are not going to stay around for pizza if I order pizza? Not going to stay around. Thank you. I always say I'm not going to eat like half a pizza. Okay, I'll factor that out.
The area, the Jabal in Damascus is a mountain or a mountain top called Tur Zeta.
Is it associated with any Nabi, any prophet? Because I'm trying to remember from my like Christian upbringing if there's any mention of that area, then I can't.
Well, there is some tafsir say it is the area of Ashab al-Kahf, which is the people of the cave. I don't know if it's in modern day Syria or modern day Jordan.
I've heard that was in modern day Turkey.
So it's so
in Anatolia.
And the Teen Masjid Ashab al-Kahf. So Masjid Damascus. Now, with those say a Teen Masjid Damascus, and without قال الحارس وابن زيد أن التين مسجد دمشق والزيتون مسجد بيت المقدس. Masjid Damascus, then it's the Damascus Mosque, but it can't be the Amud Mosque because Amud Mosque is not built on a mountaintop. So I don't know where Tur Zeta is. وهما جبلان بالشام يقال لأحدهما طور زيتا وللآخر طور تينا وهو تأويل الربيع. So this is some said that it is the masjid in Damascus is the masjid of Nuh, but again Nuh takes us to modern day Turkey. It's not, of course, because they always say Ash-Sham, except Al-Haris, Ibn Zayd said Masjid Damashq, not Ash-Sham, but Damashq specifically. وقال كعب الأحبار وابن زيد أن التين دمشق في ذات نفسها, that it is Damascus. I mean, probably the reason I didn't research this is that I think to the extent that it refers to sacred geography, then the opinion that made the most sense to me is that it would combine the area of revelation of Jesus, the revelation of Moses, and the geography of revelation for Muhammad. But beyond that, it doesn't make sense that it's referring to a sacred geography because we know of no other sacred geography. The people of the cave or Noah's ship, or Noah's ship is supposed to have landed, that's modern Turkey. It's not Damascus. It's maybe possibly what was at the time referred to as a Sham, because Sham is very ill-defined.
Is Dawood affiliated with that area? Because the only other thing in common with all those other prophets is that they actually had books that they brought. So Isa had the Injil, and Muhammad had Quran, obviously, and Musa had the Torah. So I always thought maybe it was Dawood, because Dawood had the Zabur of the Psalms, but I don't know if David's associated with that area or not.
Is it the mountain where Damascus is actually built on?
No, Damascus is not built
I don't
on
think Damascus
a
is built
mountain.
on
There's a mountain facing Damascus.
Yeah.
So I was gonna.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Zulkifli, right?
Yeah. So I was
Here,
gonna
here
say.
I want to say something. So when I was in boarding school, actually one of my teacher, my sheikh, telling us a story of a Shadu Tafsir, or the strange interpretation, to say that actually Tin here refers to Bodhisattva, or the place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the place where Bodhisattva, the place where Buddha gets enlightenment. The reason why called Bodhisattva is because actually, according to this tafsir, I tried to track down the interpretation. I remember it says it's Al-Qasimi or Al-Kashaf, I don't know, but I tried to track it down, but I couldn't find it so far. But the reason why it's Bodhisattva is because actually the word Zulkifl in Arabic, which is Zulkifl, is equivalent to those who are belong to Kifl. And Buddhism, or Buddha, actually was born in a place called Kapol Lastu in Indic word, which is very close meaning to Zulkifl. Zulkifl, Zul is mean those who belong to, right? Zulkifl, and Kifl is also the place where Buddha Gautama was born. And Tin most probably is referred to place where Buddha got enlightenment, because we don't know how many numbers of Rasul is, a lot of Rasul, right? So I remember my sheikh telling me that there is one tafsir who said that probably because actually Watini wa Zaytuni wa Turisina wa Hadal Baladi is telling about Jesus, about Moses, and about Muhammad. Who is this? The first one who is mentioned. We don't know who actually the prophet was referred to by this, the first one, because the last three is clear. He is referred to Jesus, referred to Moses, and referred to Muhammad. The first one is most probably referred to the place where Buddha got enlightenment, which is the theme here is Bodhisattva. The place of enlightenment, because of the word Zulkifl was interpreted as the place when Buddha was born. I don't know. It's crazy interpretation.
No, but I'll track that down, because that's amazing. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I tried to track down too, but I couldn't find it. I wish if my sheikh was still alive, I can ask him directly.
I've read a tafsir that says what is it? Al-Qadr is the Buddha, because because Buddhism is affiliated with a lot of jade, like green.
Yeah.
And
I remember that we can find it in the text. For example, Sheikh Ahmad Sorkati, one of the early Yemenis sheikh who reside in Indonesia and become one of the most famous ulama in Indonesia in 1930 1940, right? Refer to this one also, saying that Zulkifli is most probably, according to his interpretation, is also Buddha. This probably is because we live in area where Buddhism and Hinduism is so strong.
yeah.
And we don't have any Judaism at all. We have some Christianity brought by the Western colonialism. So the scholar tried to find the connection between the place where they live with the closest neighbor, which is Buddhism and Hinduism, into interpretations.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the power of the text itself. I mean, the way I believe that that is part of the divinity of the text, is that it can incorporate and appeal to, and when you engage it can unfold various meanings at various levels to various people. And so, and that, it doesn't trouble me at all that the text doesn't have like a mathematical meaning. Any text that is so inflexible ends up becoming marginalized and irrelevant. But yeah, of course, this contemporary, this really, I think, offensive modern orientation that what they call the Arab Zionists these days, that try to argue that Jerusalem was never important to Muslims. I saw yesterday. I found an article in the Egyptian media that basically tried. Tino Zaytun, it doesn't refer to Palestine. It makes some bizarre argument about how you had olives growing somewhere in the desert, which but it's for centuries everyone understood that this is a reference to Jerusalem. I don't know how whether these arguments are convincing anyone because of the artificiality of the social media. These countries that have among them like this Israeli companies and Emirati companies and Saudi companies that create a social perception of an acceptance of an idea that could have nothing to do with the actual reality of what people are saying. Of course, anyway, I'm sidetracking into. I was just noticing that as that meeting in Bahrain for the deal of the century, the Kushner, you had all these electronic armies on the net trying to create the impression that there are thousands upon thousands of Muslims everywhere that believe that Al-Aqsa Mosque is not where the Isra and Mi'raj took place, and that Umar ibn Khattab pretty much was messed up when he built the Aqsa Mosque because that he just it's really shocking. It's amazing that it really raises my blood pressure.
And the net has that power to make one voice seem like so many voices.
They get money. I know that these people, they literally have people that just their full-time job is just to sit on computers and.
I actually want to add to your last question, just really quickly. The reason why I was looking up Dhul Kufl is because there is a cemetery on that mountain facing Damascus that's called Nabiullah Dhul Kufl. And so, there's also an area called Al-Arba'in, and some people interpret that, so the 40, some people interpret that as Ahlul Kahf. Yeah. And that area, is towards the very bottom of that mountain is an area called Sheikh Muhaddin, which is where Ibn Arabi was buried. And that district is also called Salihiyya, so where, I don't know how you translate Salihiyya, where Salihin.
The pious.
Yeah, so a lot of companions were buried in that area.
Yeah. But that's Do you know where Jabal Ilia is?
No.
Because I've read some say, well, it's a reference to Jabal Ilia in Sham, and I tried to look up where Jabal Ilia is and where in Sham, but a lot of the names have changed.
There could be Aramaic names changed into Arabic. Yeah.
Professor, talking about the literal meaning, when I was in Egypt, they would mix a fig with and pour olive on it and say, eat this. This is so Until now, I thought, well, that's what it meant, you know, just amazing nutritional value.
I thought that was going to be a short question.
I'm sorry. I've never have I ever had figs here? I've had them back home all the time, and they're amazing. I mean, they taste really good. Figs are truly knackers, but figs with olive oil,
just smash it. Eat it with bread.
That sounds kind of gross.
That's really,
because figs are sweet.
yeah, they're really good. I don't think you've ever had them here.
Do figs exist here?
Oh, yeah.
Especially in California.
California.
Around this season, I think.
Yeah. Let's start bringing some.
So, I had just two more. One is, sorry. Was Fakhruddin Razi, was he Mu'tazili too? I wasn't. Or was he?
I don't think he was Mu'tazili. He definitely had clear rationalist orientations, but I don't think he was, because Ibn Rushd himself, although
I think he's Ash'ari still.
Is Ash'ari? Okay.
Because Ibn Rushd himself criticizes the Mu'tazila, although, so, yeah, he's Ash'ari, but but I think his rationalist orientations are stronger than a lot of other Ash'aris.
Okay. And then I guess the last question is maybe a little longer. It's I guess it relates to the third and fourth verse. These two verses kind of remind me of this theme that I guess it jumped out at me when I first converted to Islam and I was reading through the Quran. Most notably, like when it talks about the story of the prophets and how basically it kind of sets up this. The only way I can describe it is like a moral historiography, where like nations and people fall by virtue of their moral failures, essentially. And this kind of like reminded me of that, even though I guess the pronouns here I guess could be collective he or like an individual. But I was wondering if some of the early Mufassirun sort of read that as well. Not just necessarily like a personal sort of falling if you don't live up to these moral standards, but like nations will also fall if they don't do what they're supposed to do.
Interestingly, you know, you find the one who draws the one that comes to mind right away is Abdul Qadir Jazairi has a book called Al-Jalasat, and it's not a tafsir. It's 100. Literally 100 chapters. Each chapter talks about itajalli, and he has one of his tajalliyat, one of his majalis, talks about Surah At-Tin, and he says that in Allah revealed here the same laws of nature that unfold in the microcosm of the human being are generalized to nations. So he has an interest that says, you know, don't you see that if an animal doesn't act according to its own nature, so if a lion fails to live up to its potential as a lion, it becomes asfal as-safilin. It crumbles to, and it's destroyed by others. And if a dog, the dog doesn't eat meat and eats vegetables, the dog becomes weak and frail and so on. And that's the sunnah that Allah created for each of us to realize our innate potential and live up to it. And the same sunnah that Allah placed in plants and animals and individuals, Allah placed for nations. And when Allah says, "Alaysa Allahu ahkam al-hakimin," it's a reference, it's a message to us that if you want to have hikmah, if you want to partake in hikmatullah, is to understand that law of which, of course, Abdul Qadir Jazairi resisted French colonialism and was a Sufi, but was one of the heroes of resistance to French colonialism. And, you know, France imprisoned him and tortured him and exiled him. And, you know, what's very interesting, and I didn't realize till I read his Jalasat, is that his resistance to the French was not nationalist, because a lot of modern histories are written that he was an Algerian, but no, it was he resisted the French because he believed that they stole from Muslims their innate potential that Allah had given them, and that colonialism is a disruption of that innate natural law, and that all those fellow Algerians that cooperate and work with French colonialism and that adopt French as their own language, they fail to understand hikmah that Allah challenges us to adopt in Alaysa Allahu bihakam al-hakimin, which, I mean, it's really it's a fascinating, because it's sort of the link between the tradition and the wake of colonialism, and especially that we know, you know, his own legacy and how he translated that theology into real life. So that's the one that comes to mind that's closest that I can remember to what you're saying.
Any more questions on the surah?
So my question is kind of like looking at it as a whole. I don't see it as something that happened past tense, even though it's translated like we created then reduced. I see it as like it's happening. So when you talked about potential, I believe potential isn't a thing we reach, it's a spark that occurs. And so the potential of creating man in its finest state or reducing man in its worst state is like our ability to do that, and God has given us the potential to meet those. So I kind of see it as like a window, and like a spiraling window when I read this. And I don't know if like that makes sense in the way that it's read in Arabic, but like even the word radadana, like when I say it, I like get lost in it, and I just kind of like fall into this like, whoa.
But I think the past tense is dangerous because although I'm sure a lot of contemporary Arabs might understand it as, you know, okay, this is something that Allah created and is done, but I think that sucks the meaning out of that surah completely, and I think you're right in that it is talking about potentialities and your own autonomy in deciding which way to take that potential, to asfal al-safilin or to ahsan taqweem. So I mean, if you those who and I think that's why it's unfortunate also that in translations, and I've noticed nearly all the translations translated as in the past tense form.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous, because if you don't understand that, a lot of times you can write in the past tense but refer to the mudara, to the present.
Yeah,
in Arabic, that
but we do that in English too.
risky.
There's that convention in English where you write in the past, but you're actually, this is kind of an eloquent way of referring to the present.
To the present.
Yeah.
I've actually done that at the Conference of the Books a couple of times.
That's it.
No, but you're right. I completely agree with you.
May I ask, do we have time for one more? You said, and I feel like, even though this is borne out in the Quran, I feel like if Muslims heard this, their heads will explode. That you said that Allah's will is contingent upon our will.
Yeah.
Could you expound upon that a little bit more? Because I think that I mean, I think that's hard for a lot of modern folks to wrap their head around. Because I guess the conception of God is that, sometimes I think, like, really, I don't know, harsh monotheism sort of pushes this, that he's so, like, remote that, like, nothing, I guess affects him. And the idea that Allah's will is being contingent on our will, I think especially with a lot of, like, Wahhabi Sufis, that probably blow their mind.
You know, it's really like the thing that's so, a lot of the especially, I mean, Ahl al-Hadith, but even the pre-modern Ahl al-Hadith used to be more sophisticated than, like, a lot of the modern Ahl al-Hadith, who, especially of the Wahhabi orientation, where on the one hand they deny absolute predestination, in the sense that they say an insan mukhayyar wa musayyar at the same time. That they deny predestination. They deny the idea that some people were created for hellfire and some people were created for heaven, because there's a hadith that says something. So I mean, although there are exceptions, there are some Wahhabis that I've met that insisted that this hadith is authentic and that it is true that something, but rather they say no. Then they get into the illogical argument, or the implausible argument, or incoherent argument that, well, no, it's not that Allah creates some people for heaven and some people create for hell. Is that Allah knows that some people are going to go to heaven and people are going to go to hell, but Allah knows it, although Allah didn't decide it.
Yeah, it's like foreknowledge isn't the same thing as coercion. Right?
And then, of course, the among the Ahl al-Kalam, the debate that you don't see in the modern age, but it was always, well, why do you have to make this argument? They say because to say that Allah doesn't know, then it naqs lillah, it is as if you are
attributing deficiencies.
Yeah, attributing deficiencies to Allah, because to say that Allah doesn't know. But the debate in the Islamic tradition, well, is it a deficiency to know what doesn't exist? So if you don't know something when there's nothing to know, because it hasn't transpired yet, how can that be described as a deficiency? So if an action hasn't been committed, then it's not deficiency to say, well, it hasn't happened, so there's nothing to know. Yeah. It's and that, so the response, or the debate that usually went that, well, Allah knows when there is something to know, but there is nothing to know until the action is actually committed. And so when Allah says لِيَرَى كَيْفَ تَفْعَلُونَ, so Allah will see what you will do, Allah actually means it, but once you do it, Allah will know it. Or once you decide it, or once the events unfold for it. But if it hasn't, now there are some people who try to, some rather, what was the name of that movie? The Matrix.
Yeah.
There are some arguments within the Sufi tradition that are very Matrixy-like, that, well, Allah knows because we actually, everything that is happening has already, we are living in the past. So in fact we are like the stars. The light come, but the star is long gone. So we are not actually really alive. We are as if images in a mirror. And it gets very, really twist your brain. You know, so there is this.
How about building on that? Like, Allah knows every possible permutation of every possible decision you could make. So Allah does know everything, but
it's like infinity. It's like what do you call it?
And then maybe if I can reset it in a different way, the matrix thing, like the fact that we live in time, and as a human being, like time, like we live within it, so like we can't just surpass that, even though like technically or scientifically there's theories about travel through time. For Allah, this does not apply.
I mean,
so Allah is outside of the time thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have, especially in the pre-modern tradition, you read some really, you know, like Ibn Arabi's argument about we are reality as mirror images. That and I have to admit, some of it it goes beyond my even. So now, of course, the modern apologetics are the weakest of these arguments, which basically we were all raised with, and I'm sure this will sound very familiar to you, that no, it's like Allah's knowledge works in the fashion that Allah, it's like your mother knows what you're going to do before you do it.
Yeah.
But will punish you when you do wrong anyway. That your mother knows you so well, so your mother can predict everything you're going to do. So that's the way modern Muslims. Although most modern Muslims are surprised when they hear that this argument is actually not very anchored in the tradition. I mean, this is a very modern invention. The idea there are many philosophical problems with this argument. The argument about Allah is out of time and space, and so you have to understand. I mean, it's much more philosophically persuasive than the argument about mother knowing you. But anyway, the short answer is that though many. The best way we can summarize all the various philosophical arguments, because they get very, especially in Ilm al-Kalam or Kalami books, they get very nuanced and dense and very fine distinctions and so on, is that idea that Allah's will is contingent on your will is very well supported in so many permutations of Ash'ari and Maturidi, leave alone the Mu'tazili. I mean, even just reading something like Maqalat al-Islamiyyin by Ash'ari, it's in Maqalat al-Islamiyyin, Allah's, there are things that are predestined from the moment of our creation, and things perhaps like our death. But even Muslim theologians, most modern Muslims are even surprised to know that the majority of Muslim theologians said that if you are murdered, you are stolen your qadr. And part of the reason that murder is such an offense is that when you were created, you were destined, you're going to die at the age of and the date of X. But then someone comes and murders you. That person, in fact, has altered the fate that Allah, under other trajectories, you were going to. So that, I mean, as much as it shocks modern Muslims, but Allah's will is contingent upon your own, is extremely well supported. And if it takes a philosophical mind to even start talking about, well, what does it mean for willpower to exist if if we understand our existence within the contingencies of time and space, it is possible for us to then think about our willpower within contingencies that are not dependent upon our time and space? Is it fair to us to expect us to understand our willpower? Mystical schools say yes, it's fair, because if you need a level of mysticism to understand that that reality is so false, but that's not the school that I don't. In that point, that's not what I adhere to. I really believe that Allah's will is contingent on our own, and that Allah determines alternative fates, and which fate you're going to end up with depends on what you decide.
Could you expound more on the last part?
I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, just for the sake of argument, right? Allah says, okay, if
No, yo, don't say. You got a black person here, man. Save the cops, man.
the mock actually makes sound.
You got it. About to scare a brother, man.
Should I wait for Grace, or is she gonna get mad at me if I don't wait for her? You know, the thing about giving Grace quota is because you don't, Grace will ask so many questions that she'll give me a splitting headache. So early on in our marriage, I said, okay, listen, every day I'm going to give you a question quota. And then when she uses them up and she asks me a question, I said, your quota's up, sorry, you can't answer. And I enforce it till now. It's been 30 years now, and I stick to it. And I don't think a day has passed that she hasn't used up her quota.
That's a good thing.
Which I mean is to her credit.
Yeah. What percentage of her questions are you just like, yeah, I don't know?
I mean, I've tried to do that, but she can tell when I say that just to get her off my back.
Oh, but I mean that like in earnest, like how Imam Malik is like, yeah, you came all the way from wherever to ask me these questions. I have no idea.
No, I mean, but a lot of times Grace then will develop other questions that get to what I know. So she'll say, okay, well, how about this? Do you know this? Do you know this? And then, so then you get to the point, well, okay, here's what I don't know. It's because she's just very smart. And she, it's hard to live with someone who's smart. I mean, living with dumb people is much easier.
Sorry about that.
We were praising you. But
oh, why? No.
I was explaining to people the quota question part. Why I give you quotas.
So like that hat that holds his head together when he has a headache? Yeah. We break the hat if I kept it. Or he'd wear it off.
Okay, I'm gonna tell them. It will be 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and she'll be coming to bed, and she'll start bombarding me with questions. And it doesn't even stop, even when it's 4 o'clock in the morning. It has no time limits, no...
I'm much better than I used to be.
Yeah, you are. But that's because of the quota system. Okay, what was the question?
The second part.
The expansion of...
about the fates, it's determines on the, what's called.
Oh, yeah, okay. So here's, like for instance, let's assume that Allah doesn't determine, for the sake of argument, Allah doesn't determine solely who you're going to marry when you're created. If you're asking me what I believe, I think Allah said, will have the fate. Like if you marry, let's say that there's a loser person. So if you marry this loser person, this is going to be the trajectory of your fate. If you make the decision not to marry the loser person, this is going to be the trajectory of your fate. And you can imagine you can imagine not just 2 options, but you can imagine 10 different options, each that has its own trajectories. And which trajectory you're going to take depends on you. Each is a path. So it's like, if you study, this will be your path. If you don't study, this will be your path. And you can multiply that, and we can now understand it in like if you imagine video games, right? And video games, right?
They have multiple endings.
Yeah, you can take this trajectory, you can take this trajectory, you can take this trajectory. Each is a trajectory. And it is all within the sovereignty of Allah. But you can't shirk off responsibility and say, well, it's Allah's will, what do I do? No, you have a choice. You've always had a choice. I had a student, and I'll never forget, I think actually Grace mentioned the student. Well, I had a student who, a long time ago, he was a very promising guy, and I don't know why, he just was drawn to this woman who was very obviously problematic, for very materialistic, very backbites all the time, talks about people, constantly turning him against others, and so on. So they actually, when he was talking to his friends about whether he should marry her or not, so they said, well, why don't you ask Ustaz? And I never forget this, he said, no, I won't ask him because I know he'll tell me not to marry her. Okay? Now, he kept saying that he has to marry her because it's his fate. Well, there's nothing to do. That's qadar Allah. That. And then he ended up marrying her, and he became a complete loser. I mean, I'm not kidding. A complete loser, because she completely, as expected, influenced his entire life. I don't think he can throw that on qada and qadar. This is your decision that you completely controlled. Oh. Assalamu alaikum. Everyone's staring. It's not fair. So, I mean, I think the way it is important that we adjust the notions of qada and qadar among Muslims, because if you travel throughout Muslim lands and you see Muslims accepting the most repulsive conditions and most unjust conditions, and they are very good at throwing it at Allah. And they Alhamdulillah, كل اللي يجيبه ربنا كويس, قضاء وقضاء قضاء وقضاء. No, it's you who brought it. It's you who earned it. This is the fate you decided. It's not. You can't throw it on Allah. And I think that's a really critical if we are going to get Muslims out of their general sense of passiveness and because I think it affects even something like what we do about someone like Salman al-Auda. I mean, so many people you talk to even now say, well, you know, if this is his, if it's his fate to die, he's going to die. You know, it's all written. You know, we're not going to extend his life 1 minute. We're not going to shorten his life. That's offensive. I mean, that is deeply offensive. To basically sit at home and say, well, you know, it's all in Allah's hands, and it's already decided whether he's going to be executed or not executed, and so what's the point of doing anything? I think any translation of the notion of qada and qadar that lends to that type of
fatalism.
Yeah, it cannot be accepted. It cannot be accepted.
And similar to that, the idea of trusting in Allah to the point that you don't do anything. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you trust in Allah that you have to do your job.
It's like a complacency, complete complacency.
Oh, God will take care.
And it's also, by the way, now the Jamia and the Madkhaliya have turned it into a philosophy of absolute obedience to despots, because there's no point in because it's our fate. Oh, it's the hakim, it's the ruler that Allah chose, and Allah put him to rule us, and if you rebel, then you're rebelling against Allah's fate.
He also put Pharaoh to rule too.
Yeah, I mean, and when you told him things, well, why did Hussein radiallahu anhu get martyred against Yazid? Oh, well, it's to teach us that rebellion is wrong. I think actually it was to teach us exactly the opposite. Oh yeah, I hear this all the time. It drives me nuts. He died to teach us, look how horrible it is to rebel. This is now the Jamia and Madkhaliya, which is, you know, the type of Islam that is funded by the Emirat and Saudi and Egypt. Is, I mean, there are American Muslims. I need to have a filter, so I don't want to name names. But American Muslims are very influential, very popular.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they give you that same stuff. You know, well, we can't protest the Emirat, we can't protest MBS, we can't protest Sisi, we can't protest even Trump. We can't protest Trump because, you know, it's Allah's will, and the only thing you can do when and remember, brother, I was told this, that it's Allah's will to punish our injustice by giving us a bad ruler like Trump. And if you're a good Muslim, your only response is sabr. So I have to say, oh, alhamdulillah, Allah for punishing me with Trump, because I deserved it. And then I have to just persevere and be patient. If that's our modern understanding of qadar, and I don't care what philosophical paradigm you take, but if that's the end result, then I rebel against it. Because that is an unethical faith. That's an immoral faith, when it basically tells you be complacent in the face of injustice, and it tells you something like, oh, well, you know, brother, instead of, I mean, this was actually told to young men, young people who excited about Malcolm X and social justice and so on. And then the response they got is, well, okay, before you talk to us about Malcolm X and all that, first, brothers, are you married? Go get married, complete your deen, and then we'll talk. I'm talking, this has actually happened. A whole bunch of young kids. So, no, go get married, forget about Sisi, forget about MBS, forget about Kaaba, forget about Palestine, forget about the Jerusalem, forget about everything. Forget about the genocide in Yemen. First complete your deen, have a few children, and then let's talk. Let's see, what is this? this Islam? I mean, how can you want to be a Muslim if this is Islam? I tell one of them, you know, I've been contacted by a number of women, Syrian women from Sham, who were impregnated, raped by government soldiers, right? So they want to know if they can have an abortion. Oh, brother, you know, you should tell them just to be patient because this is Allah's punishment. They should endure it. Well, I want to talk about it. I want to say that this is disgusting. You know, brother, Allah doesn't want you to talk about bad things. Keep it to yourself. Tell them to be patient. And, you know, that what you can do is maybe find a man to marry them. These in the U.S., these are teaching our converts. They have thousands and thousands of followers. It makes me want to, I don't know, it makes me want to eat my hat, not wear my hat. No, and I guess that's why they come to because I also know the money flow. You know, if you are saying the right type of Islam, you get money from back channels that make you very, very comfortable. And subhanAllah, they come from back channels. And it all looks very legitimate because suddenly you're getting calls for paid interviews. You know, I've never done a paid interview in my life. But suddenly you're getting paid $10,000 for a freaking interview. And so, if you're an academic in the US, a Muslim academic, and you're willing to spin that type of stuff, and that's the thing that kills me. Because that's all, you know, common Muslims just don't know about stuff like that. They can't imagine that, you know, there's a huge difference between getting an honorarium in a lecture of $500 and getting a $20,000 honorarium for a lecture. But the people who are going to give you a $20,000 honorarium lecture is not going to be just an academic, secular academic institution. You know, it's going to be certain type of interests, like, you know, when universities in the Emirat or universities in Saudi. I know a guy who got in an honorarium for a visit for one lecture, $48,000. $48,000. One lecture. It was an hour and a half. 45 minutes lecture and 45 minutes answer questions. And you know, and so huge difference in quality of life, a huge difference in perspective. When you're getting that type of money, you justify anything. You philosophize anything because you get to a certain standard of life and you get used to it. And you don't want to do the type of cuts that's going to change your standard of life. And lawyers, I mean, but even academics are very good at philosophizing whatever they want to philosophize. I mean...
And just for the record, I mean, this is really, you know, we were talking about this. When I met Dr. Abou El Fadl and he was a young academic at Princeton, the Saudis tried to bribe him. That was the first step. So they wanted to have editorial control over over his writing, and he said no. So then the next level is they wanted to give him the $1 million share of the award for whatever.
First the chair and then the award.
And then the award. And again, it was no. So it's like once they see that they can't bribe you, then they go to the other end, which is then they try to kill you or assassinate you or whatever. And so we've had a lot of death threats and bomb scares and, you know, assassination attempts and things like that. So, but, you know, it's like, how, you know, just to have it on the record, because this happens, you know, and everyone has an opportunity to make that choice that, okay, I'm going to choose this trajectory and live a comfortable life, or I'm going to choose this trajectory.
You know what the Saudis learned from from the Saudis and Emiratis learned from the Israelis, which is even worse, is that instead of assassinating your life, assassinate your reputation. Because they learned the game that you hire, you pay millions of dollars to one of the media things, and suddenly they can flip the entire image and create a mythology about you that has nothing to do with reality, and that's and I'm obsessed with it. I blame Muslims with money because they're the ones that Allah has entrusted the resources to, and
any more questions?
Actually, I have a question that is not related at all.
Yeah, I have a question too, but it was
So
more related to what you were talking about at the beginning.
So are we close the questions on the surah? Anybody else have any questions on the surah? Okay, just take your cue. Are you still okay?
okay, we'll just do a couple more.
Okay, just a couple more. So
Just to follow up based on the last point that you just mentioned about money. So I cannot, personally, just me, my own weakness probably, I couldn't marry the two between the need to gain a lot of material in order to help Islamic cause, and then the personal endeavor to basically like zuhud. Like I think only Ibn Farabi mentioned, Ibn Arabi mentioned that in order to get the station that is worthy, that very close to God, you have to go through poverty. That's like the easiest way. And then the Christianity has a similar fashion. Like people, it's like going to heaven is like needle, something like that. It's like harder.
It's easier for a camel to go through the avenue. Well, that's the New Testament than for a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah. So like, why should I aspire to be rich and help these Muslims in mundane world when what I wanted to do is, I know death is coming sooner than later. Then why should I just like focus on the afterlife and kind of like skip this whole mundane world thing?
Because because a lot of people use the idea of zuhd as a facade to simply be stingy. Zuhd means that you actually not make money. That's what zuhd means. Is that it doesn't mean that you make the money and put it in the bank and live very modestly. That's not zuhd. Zuhd means that you actually commit yourself to living in poverty, meaning not earning a lot of money. And whatever money you have, if you want to do the zuhd path, you give it away. And when Ibn Arabi talks about living in poverty, and Ibn Arabi actually lived like that. Ibn Arabi, whatever money you would give him, in fact, one of the famous stories about him is someone came and he said, I have inherited 6,000 dinars, I want you to take it and do with it good deeds, and including yourself. And he said, well, why don't you do the good deeds with it? He said, because I want you, I respect you, I admire you, I want you to improve your life. So Ibn Arabi took the money and threw it in front of the guy, and threw it in the lake. Whether the guy retrieved it or not, you get different stories. Whether he was able to dive for the money, the gold coins. But zuhd is not, I'm just going to keep the money in the bank. It's not the zuhd. It's not making the money or making the money and giving it away. But the path of zuhd is the path for the elect few. If you look at an inverted pyramid, it's the path of the elite, because most people with poverty, their spirituality will not improve. Their spirituality will crumble. For poverty to feed your soul and to propel you towards higher spirituality, you have to be a zahid, abid, muta'abbid. You have to be a person who doesn't care about material things and fills the void in the heart was constant dhikr and worship. So the path of zuhud is not you're just sitting in poverty, I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm poor. The path of zuhud is I don't even care that I'm poor because I am worshiping Allah all the time and Allah is filling my heart and time and that's all I want. That's the path that Ibn Arabi is talking about. And it is a path fit for an elect few. Elect few that will actually be able to match that path. Other than that, most people are like all other human beings, like the vast majority of human beings have good days, bad days, have ups and downs, have moments of enlightenment, moments of darkness, and moments of whatever. But what the mainstream rule is for the overwhelming majority of human beings who are unable to go the path of zuhud, and they very quickly can know whether that's a path that's fit for them or not. All you have to do is just deny yourself for a short period of time, and you will know if that's a path for you or not. They are required to perform jihad through their resources, and the money that they earned is a trust in their hand. It is not theirs. It's the famous hadith that Allah in the final day will confront you with all types of poor people who Allah will tell you, that risk that I gave you, that money that I gave you in your hand, actually I intended it to go to X or Y, needy people, and you failed to deliver it to them. So, and that X or Y person will confront you in the year after and say, Allah gave you this money, but it was intended for me, and you didn't deliver it to me. And that failure, and here it goes back again to the idea of alternative faiths. That so money is one of the hardest trusts that Allah puts in your hands. You can give up, you can give sadaqah willingly, or Allah can send someone to. Or Allah can send something in your path where you hit someone by accident and they sue you, and then a lawyer will take all your money. If Allah really has given up on you, Allah will not send a lawsuit your way, will not send poor people your way, will not send any cause your way, and will allow you to just accumulate and gorge on your money. Because that would eat away at your soul, and that's a curse. Those rich people who no longer have any challenges. Allah tells us.
It says in the Quran, literally, exactly that. People that basically don't go right, Allah lets them continue their wrongdoing. It says that over and over.
It's because Allah, and it says this repeatedly, that because Allah has given up on them. Don't think that Allah allows them to become so wealthy and rich because Allah likes them, or that Allah approves of what they do. It's exactly because of the opposite. And so that's the real challenge. I know, subhanAllah, I know the Egyptian guy, multi-millionaire. He has an empire, has mansions here in the US, has mansions in Europe, and so on. SubhanAllah, people are so. He just was. He was having a dangerous heart operation here in the U.S. And before he went into the operation, he was telling my father and some other people that, I didn't give enough. If Allah allows me to, if Allah helps me through this operation, I'm going to do it. And then the last time I talked to my father, his operation went well, and he actually is now back in Egypt. He said, he forgot all the stuff he said, all the promises he said about all the poor people. Now that person is in real trouble.
Which Allah also talks about that person.
Yeah, exactly. A million times. Yeah. Is it surprising? No. That's the way people. Money is the worst demon, by the way. Money is really demonic. And the love of money. I mean, human beings betray their brother, their blood. They betray their mother and their father and their siblings and their wives and their husbands for money. The number one cause of divorce is money. Number one cause of divorce. You know, people who just lovey, and they're all, and then the minute money comes in, suddenly love flies out of the window. And so money is it's amazing.
I wanted to ask Grace about her take on converts being pressured to change their names to like Arabic names.
Question for Grace.
Yeah, and I'll give the doctor a break because I'm generally vehemently opposed to converts changing their names unless I guess they have pagan names, which no one really does anymore. Or sometimes like I've come across people who like they need to distance themselves from their previous life, and in that sense I guess it's okay, but you know, like I guess maybe outside of those instances, like I'm generally opposed to it because I think it sounds like
Have some pizza.
I think it does or it can create a distance culturally between that person and I guess their American culture or whatever. Like I know I've found that when people find out that I'm Muslim, and all of my non-Muslim friends know that I'm Muslim, like it's not something that I hide. I don't, you know. Or when people find out that my name is like Anthony James Hardy and not something that they can't pronounce, like or Muhammad, or it's like, you know, a Catholic name, and James is the brother of Jesus or a half brother, so one of those two. So like when they hear that, it's just like, oh, like maybe this isn't so foreign after all, like, you know, because you know my name and the way I carry myself, it's definitely like rooted in particularly the American South because I'm a Southerner, but like so. Like I'm vehemently opposed to it. Like I don't like it. You know, I don't know. I've met Malays that they didn't change their name to something Arabic from their Malay name or whatever. Persians. I don't understand why we have to be any different. You know, like, you know, for example, Anthony is the name of a lot of Catholic saints, so it's a saintly name. I don't know why I have to change it. I'm not gonna do it anyway, right? But I'm just curious what you thought about that.
Muhammad Anthony.
So, well, I looked it up. Apparently, like Anthony is like Latin and Greek. Apparently, like the Latin version is like praiseworthy, which is basically like Muhammad, and then the Greek version is like a flower, so it got like bastardized or something. But so anyway, like I know a lot of Coptic saints, and a lot of the early church fathers were Anthony, and they're also Egyptian. Oddly enough, but I'm not Egyptian. So I was curious what you thought about that, like the changing names.
So no one has more names than me right now. So I go by Grace Song, but I mean, I think in general, I think it really just depends on the personal situation. I don't think you need to.
Yeah.
When I converted, of course, you know, a lot of Muslims told me you should have a new name.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a process. And of course, then one of the first things I asked the professor when I met him is, do I need to change my name? And he said no, but I've talked about my conversion story, and so when we got married, you know, I was Grace Song, and you know, most women don't change their last name. My parents had such a strong reaction, you know, Khaled Abou El Fadl was brought tears and everything, and so it was important to me. I wanted to take Abou El Fadl. Then I went into all of my difficulty with my family, and then I decided I was so angry at them, I didn't want to be Song anymore. So then I changed my name so I selected a name, Anmar. And I chose Anmar because of my relationship with my mother-in-law. Her last name was El Nimmer, so, you know, tied in. And also because it fit my personality, and I talked about that before too. But so then I became...
El Nimmer, like the panther?
The
Tiger? Okay.
And then I told you my insanity story, which is like, I believe so much in the professor's school of thought that I went and changed my name. So now I became Anmar Grace Al Khaled Abou El Fadl, right? And so, you know, it was...
God I don't hear that one.
Yeah, I don't. It's just like, you know, filed in Texas somewhere, and I have the paperwork to prove it. But, you know, I mean, it was a journey too, and a really funny story too is when we were in Texas and I changed my name, and so we started telling people, okay, I've changed my name to Anmar, so call me Anmar. But of course, it takes a while for you to actually respond to a new name. You know? And so people would come up to me like, Anmar, 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 and I just wouldn't hear it. It was really funny. But anyway, and then. Yeah, so then I evolved and I matured and I healed and I, you know, and it was, I mean, there was a part of me too that, you know, I wanted a new identity and like a fresh start. But I never think that's a good reason. Like now looking back, I never think that's really a good reason. I mean, if it's good for your mental development, you know, that's fine. But I think because now I've come full circle where it's like, okay, I'm Grace Song now. And, you know, I'm comfortable with myself. Like for a long time, it was sort of a side story, but you know, people in high school, because when I converted, I didn't wear hijab, you know, I look the same. So even like my family or my friends or people who know me in the past, they have no reason to think that I'm any different. Yeah. And so, you know, like even the question of my high school reunion or my, you know, do I ever want to go back? And there was for a long time kind of like a shame. I didn't want to go back and I didn't want to be, you know, I wanted to be someone else. And now I'm like, no, you know, I know my purpose, I know who I am, I'm totally comfortable, you know, now I just don't want to go back, you know, I have no reason to, but I'm not scared to like confront people and say, this is who I am, this is what I believe. So it's like, okay, now I'll come full circle, I'm Grace Song in this context, but legally I'm still Anmar Grace. Okay. I will fell and all that. But long story short, I mean, so I think it really depends. And then in terms of what I was talking about today, in terms of like, you know, really avoiding this sense of foreignness. I mean, you know, I don't know why you would need to change your name, but if you like introduce yourself as, okay, I'm Aisha, I'm, you know, whatever. I think it is strange, you know, like I don't look like Aisha. You know, there's obviously a story there, and I think that I don't need to say that. Like right now I fly under the radar. I actually like that. People meet me, they have no idea I'm a devout Muslim. And I think there's a power in that because they get to know me for who I am. They respect me, they like me, and I know that I am who I am because I'm Muslim. I mean, I am, you know, I'm aware of what I'm doing because I'm Muslim. And I'm proud to say, like some of my best friends, they like me because of who I am. And then when I tell them, well, actually, I'm a devout Muslim, they're shocked. And they're like, you mean you pray 5 times a day? You mean you fast? I'm like, yeah, I do all these things. And it's like a stereotype breaker. And I think that that's really what's necessary, too, is that people need to, like, remove sort of the vehicles for, you know, stereotyping and dismissing your humanity. And so that's, yeah, so.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, my experience with this has been, like, the pressure, it kind of works like the logic goes, now that you're one of us, you should change your name to connect yourself with some idea of, like, the Muslim legacy. But my response is usually like, I always saw that legacy as more of an ethical one, so I would rather act like them than just have a superficial like name that most people aren't. Because look, I'm from the hood in trailer parks. No one's gonna know how to pronounce Arabic, and they still don't. Like if I went back home and was like, yo, my name is like Lookman, they'd be like, what? Like, dude, you're Anthony. Like, so like, I for some reason, like I said, I come in contact with a lot of converts. I always, and I guess because I've been a Muslim for a while, like you both know, not as long, they always want my opinion on this matter, and I always tell them like, the story that Allah gave you, there's nothing necessary to be ashamed of per se. Like, so there's no need to change it. In fact, it may be of more service to Muslims in this country if you don't do it. But that's hard to.
No, and I fully believe that, and because it's that whole idea of like joining a club, right? I mean, this is about a conviction, it's not about an identity. And I think that to the extent that we can communicate that and not adopt, like, you know, like the professor calls it pietistic affectations, and that falls right into that. It's like, here are the things that we're doing because we want people to think that we're pious or we're good Muslims. And no, I mean, it has to be from your action and you know what people understand of who you are and your character and your integrity, not from your name or your scarf or your
beard or whatever, all that kind of
it's
superficial
gotta be
stuff.
more substantial than that.
Can I add to that? Just my observation. On the flip side, for at least I can speak for myself, as someone who's born Muslim and come from an immigrant background, I've always felt the need to resist changing my name, right? And so it's always been, oh, so you have to do this to fit in, right? And that's the struggle that I've encountered.
Yeah, like I don't like hearing that Muhammad changed his name to Michael.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Right.
Either.
Yeah. So it's like it's such a different different perspective, such a different. It's almost polar opposite, you know.
Right.
But I mean, I guess that's the beauty of it. Like, you know, it's such a diverse group
You should
of
be
people
proud
from
of
different backgrounds.
who you are, and you know, God gave you your potential and your, you know.
I just feel like sometimes the impulse to like colonize works both ways. So with the immigrant experience, it's like, particularly if you're like racially ambiguous, like I feel like a lot of like non-Afro Arabs are at least. It's like you can look white or whatever, like be Mo. And then from the convert angle, it's like, okay, now you guys are one of us. We're going to colonize you. Now you have to be like, I don't know, Aisha or Muhammad or something like that to be a part of the Muslim heritage or whatever that. It's kind of like it's like when you convert to Islam, you're no longer Western, but that's nonsense. Like, I'm from the South. Like, that's pretty West, right? So there's like I said, you guys have a different sort of like colonization like experience, and then we experience as converts that effort by born Muslims, ironically enough, which is really weird. I mean, that's how I experience it.
Actually, in Malaysia, there is a sheikh, very famous sheikh and preacher, who is Chinese background. He's convert from Chinese, and he don't want to change name. He's using his Chinese name completely and become controversial.
That's cool.
But then he is very successful in attracting fellow, let's say, Chinese Malaysian into Islam, because this is the reason why I don't want to change my name, because I change my religion, I'm not changing my culture. I'm still Chinese Malaysian with all the same thing, and he's very famous, and now he's pricing his effort to. This is the way, like in Java, for example, all people normally just using his Japanese name, like Adit is completely Japanese name, you know. All there is some, you know, even for example, even if you try to adapt the Arabic name into your name, you try to localize your Arabic word into your local. For example, my name is Zen.
Yeah.
People can think that my name is from Zen Buddhism, but my dad say no, your name is from Zainun. It's tarkib ma'jib min lafdin wahid. Zain, like ba'la baka. You know, ba'lun bakun. But this is from lafdun wahid. Zainun. They put it together, Zen. But if I go to the airport, never people think that my name is Arabic. They try to tweak even the Arabic name into their local, you know, localized culture, let's say.
Turks did that. The Turks have done a lot of that.
Yeah, the Turk also.
Yeah, it's true.
Today I read the fatwa of Jasir Auda about these questions. There are two conditions that he thinks that you should change your name. First is your initial name contains signs of disbelief. For example, your name is Abdul Shams or Abdul Qamar, the slave of sun. Then you should.
Basically, if it's a pagan.
Yeah. And then the second condition, your change contains like aggression.
Yeah.
Then you should change. Other than that, keep your name and tell the world that Islam is the message of humanity. I mean, universal message.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there are Arabs who still have